Students, in this video, I'm going to talk about the Catholic response to the Protestant Reformation and if I have time, some of the effects of the Protestant Reformation. How does the Catholic Church respond to this great challenge that's been posed by thinkers like Luther and Calvin and by some of the English characters in the Reformation that I was talking about earlier in the course? Well, we find that the Catholic Counter-Reformation, Catholic response to the Protestant Reformation, begins with a Pope Paul III. Pope Paul III, who recognizes that the Catholic Church needs some reform, not so much reform of its teachings, but reform of its personnel and clarification of its teachings. And so he calls a church council called the Council of Trent. And the Council of Trent doesn't lay out any new church teachings, but they clarify how Catholics should respond to the attacks of the Protestants. And this clarification provides a model for Catholic clerics and Catholic people to respond to Protestant arguments. And so the Council of Trent rejects most, or all in fact, different Protestant teachings. They reject sola scriptura. They say you need the guidance of the history of the church, which comes down from the apostles, in order to understand scripture correctly. And they also reject sola fide and sola gratia. They say human nature has been corrupted, but human beings can and do still need to cooperate with God's grace in order to be saved. The Council of Trent also affirms that there are 7 sacraments that have been a point of debate, that they are not just signs, as Calvin had said, but they actually confer divine grace. And they approve a couple of new orders, the Ursulines and the Jesuits, to help promote these teachings. And the Council of Trent is important because it's a big promotion for papal authority. Ironically enough, before the Protestant Reformation, papal authority had become pretty marginalized in the Catholic Church. But now that Catholics need a unified response, they're turning to the papacy to provide that response, and the papacy is actually becoming more influential as a result. Another event that takes place, which is a result of this rise in papal authority, is the Battle of Lepanto. The Ottoman Turks are still trying to invade Western Europe. They've tried by land, now they're trying by sea. And the new Pope, Pope Pius V, is able to put together an alliance of Catholic navies to fight against the Ottomans, and they defeat them at the Battle of Lepanto. Now, what's interesting about the Battle of Lepanto is that although it was seen as this great miraculous victory by the Catholics, in some respects, it can be fairly said that they should have expected to win. With hindsight, they should have expected to win. And that's a result, that's a legacy of the age of exploration. Because now European, or let's say Western European and Christian sailing, naval techniques, the boats they build, the way they maneuver them, has advanced far ahead of the Ottomans because they have to sail in the Atlantic, not just in the Mediterranean. And so this is a sign of this shift that we're looking at in this course, the rise of the dominance of the West in a global context. And we see this here at the Battle of Lepanto, the way in which naval technology in the West is starting to overtake other parts of the world. Apart from the Council of Trent, the other key prong of the Catholic Counter-Reformation that I want to focus on is the foundation of the Jesuit Order by Ignatius of Loyola, someone who lived pretty materialistic life, loved the life of a soldier until he was injured and invalided, and while he's convalescing, he has a conversion experience, decides to take his Catholic faith more seriously. But he takes a very different approach to taking his faith more seriously than Martin Luther and John Calvin did. He takes a military approach. It's natural and good that we should have hierarchies like the church, and we should obey those hierarchies. They know what's best, or they have insight to know what's best. Also, unlike Calvin, he promotes knowing God through the natural world and knowing God not so much knowing God, but let's say following God as an act of free will. So remember, Calvin had said we can't trust the natural world, we can't trust our sense experiences to know God, and that human beings are predestined either to heaven or to hell. And what Ignatius of Loyola is saying is we need to study the natural world. The natural world is something good that God has given us, and man has free will, or human beings have free will that they are obligated to use to try and serve God. And so Ignatius founds an order to promote these ideals called the Jesuit Order, or that becomes known as the Jesuit Order. And these Jesuits provide education, revive Catholic education in Europe, and they're missionaries to Protestant countries in Europe, but also to Asia, and they work as missionaries among Native American populations and protecting Native American populations from oppression in the New World. And so the Jesuits are also a powerful force through which the Catholic Church responds to the Protestant Reformation. I'm going to leave it there for this video, and I'm going to talk about the 30 Years' War and some of the after effects of the Protestant Reformation in another video.